The lasers of the Earth fleet burned through the Zultan warships like plasma through flesh, the very stars themselves seeming to tremble at the titanic battle unfolding in the Antares system. Standing tall on the bridge of his flagship, the EFS Intrepid, Captain Eric Collins watched the viewscreen with unwavering focus as the menacing alien vessels loomed before him. This was it, the moment of truth. Months of the Zultan's relentless encroachment on human territory had led to this fateful standoff. Collins and his battle-hardened crew knew the stakes. The fate of the human colonies hung in the balance. Failure here would mean certain enslavement or annihilation at the hands of the ruthless Zultan Empire. "Captain, incoming transmission from the Zultan commander," his communications officer reported, her voice tense. The viewscreen flickered, revealing the fierce visage of the Zultan leader. Scaly green skin glistened under the harsh bridge lighting, red eyes glowing with predatory intent. "Surrender now, human, and your deaths will be quick," the alien growled, baring razor-sharp teeth. "Resist, and we will make an example of you for all to see." Collins met the Zultan's gaze unflinchingly. "We will never surrender to you," he declared, his voice resonating with steely resolve. "We stand ready to defend our people, no matter the cost." As the transmission cut out, Collins turned to his crew. "Battle stations," he barked. "We're outgunned and outnumbered, but we have something they don't, the indomitable human spirit. Today we fight not just for ourselves, but for the future of our species. Let's show these Zultan bastards what we're made of." The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity as the crew rushed to their stations, preparing for the battle of their lives. Collins settled into his command chair, his mind racing with thoughts of the events that had led them to this pivotal moment. It had all started with the discovery of the Zultan Empire, a technologically advanced alien race with a thirst for conquest that rivaled humanity's own. Diplomacy had failed, the Zultans dismissing human overtures of peace with contempt. Now, with their warships poised to strike at the heart of human territory, Collins knew that this battle could determine the course of the war and the fate of humanity itself. The Earth fleet faced daunting odds, but they would not back down. They would fight with every ounce of strength and courage they possessed, determined to prove that the human spirit could outshine even the most advanced alien technology. The Zultans thought they could break humanity's resolve, but they were about to learn the true meaning of humanity fuck yeah. Collins gripped the armrests of his chair as the first shots were fired, the deck shuddering beneath his feet. The battle had begun, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The void of space lit up with the flashes of laser fire and exploding missiles. The Earth fleet fought back valiantly, their weapons pummeling the Zultan ships. Captain Collins barked orders from the bridge of the Intrepid, his crew working in perfect unison to keep the ship in the fight. "Target their weapon systems and engines," Collins commanded. "We need to take out as many of their ships as we can." Despite being outnumbered, the Earth fleet held its own against the technologically superior Zultan vessels. Collins's tactical expertise and the skill of his crew proved to be a match for the enemy's advanced weaponry. As the battle raged on, Collins noticed a strange pattern in the Zultan's attack formations. Their ships moved with an almost mechanical precision, each maneuver perfectly coordinated with the others. "They're using an algorithm to coordinate their attacks," Collins realized. "It's making them predictable. We can use that against them." He turned to his tactical officer. "Order the fleet to break formation and engage the Zultans at close range. We'll disrupt their strategies and hit them where they're vulnerable." The Earth fleet's smaller, more maneuverable ships darted between the hulking Zultan vessels, weaving in and out of their formation. They targeted the enemy's engines and weapon systems, inflicting critical damage with each pass. The tide of the battle began to turn in the humans' favor. The Zultan's ships faltered under the relentless onslaught, their once impenetrable defenses crumbling. But Collins knew that the Zultans would not give up easily. They were a proud and ruthless species, determined to crush any resistance to their conquest. Suddenly a massive shape emerged from behind a nearby moon. It was a Zultan warship, larger and more heavily armed than any Collins had ever seen. The Devastator had arrived, and it had been lying in wait for the perfect moment to strike. The Devastator's weapons tore through the Earth fleet's defenses like paper. Collins watched in horror as several of his ships were destroyed, their crews lost in the blink of an eye. He knew that he had to act quickly to prevent a total massacre, but what could he do against such a formidable foe? The Devastator was unlike any ship they had faced before, and it seemed invincible. As the Devastator loomed over the Intrepid, its weapons primed to deliver the killing blow, Collins made a split-second decision. "Activate the quantum disruptor," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos on the bridge. His crew hesitated for a moment, knowing the risks involved with using the experimental weapon, but they trusted their captain's judgment and sprang into action. "Quantum disruptor powering up, sir," the weapons officer reported, his fingers flying across the console. The Intrepid shuddered as the Devastator's weapons pounded its shields, the energy barriers flickering dangerously. Collins gripped the armrests of his chair, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. Come on," he muttered, watching the quantum disruptor's power levels rise. The bridge crew worked frantically to keep the ship together, diverting power from non-essential systems to reinforce the shields. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the air. Just as the Intrepid's shields were about to collapse, the quantum disruptor reached full charge. "Fire!" Collins commanded, his voice steady despite the dire situation. A blinding beam of energy erupted from the Intrepid's bow, engulfing the Devastator and the nearby Zultan ships. The viewscreen automatically dimmed to protect the crew's eyes from the intense light. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent, the Zultan vessels drifting lifelessly in space. Then, one by one, the disabled ships began to explode, their reactors overloading from the quantum disruptor's effects. The Earth fleet cheered as the Devastator vanished in a massive fireball, the once mighty warship reduced to a cloud of debris. But their celebration was short-lived. As the quantum disruptor's energy dissipated, the Intrepid's systems began to fail, the lights on the bridge flickering and dimming. "Report!" Collins barked, his brow furrowed with concern. "The quantum disruptor drained our power reserves, sir," the engineering officer replied, his face grim. "Shields and weapons are barely operational." Collins didn't hesitate. "Divert all available power to shields and weapons," he ordered. "We're not out of this fight yet." As the crew worked to restore the Intrepid's systems, a new wave of Zultan ships emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with the promise of vengeance. Collins watched the viewscreen, his jaw set with determination. The Earth fleet had struck a blow against the Zultans, but the battle was far from over. The viewscreen filled with the sight of the approaching Zultan ships, their hulls bristling with weapons. Collins felt a chill run down his spine, but he pushed the fear aside. He had a duty to his crew and to humanity. "Ensign Mira, I want a full analysis of the data from our last engagement. Look for anything we can use against them," Collins ordered, his voice steady. Mira, a young Breen officer, her scaled skin glistening under the bridge lights, nodded and set to work, her fingers flying across the console. The bridge crew waited tensely, watching the Zultan ships grow larger on the viewscreen. "Captain, I think I've found something," Mira reported, her eyes widening. "There's a vulnerability in their shield harmonics. If we modulate our weapon frequencies to match, we might be able to penetrate their defenses." Collins leaned forward, studying the data on Mira's screen. It was a risky plan, but it might be their only chance. "What are the potential side effects?" he asked, his brow furrowed. "It could cause power fluctuations in our own systems," Mira admitted. "We'd be exposed." Collins weighed the options, the seconds ticking by. The Zultan ships were almost within firing range. He had to make a decision. "Do it," he said finally, his jaw tightening. "Modulate our weapons and prepare to engage." The bridge crew sprang into action, their hands moving over their consoles with practiced precision. The hum of the weapon systems filled the air as they recalibrated, the ship vibrating with barely contained power. But as Collins watched the Zultan ships on the view screen, something nagged at the back of his mind. Their movements were erratic, almost too random. They broke formation, weaving around each other in a strange dance. "What the hell are they doing?" Collins muttered, leaning forward in his chair. Suddenly, a massive energy surge erupted from the Zultan ships, washing over the Earth fleet like a tidal wave. Consoles sparked and went dark, the lights on the bridge flickering. "Report!" Collins barked, gripping the armrests of his chair. "Our weapons are offline, sir," Mira said, her voice tight with fear. "They've overloaded." Collins felt a sinking feeling in his gut as he watched the Zultan ships close in, their weapons glowing with deadly intent. The Earth fleet was defenseless, caught in a trap of their own making. The Zultans had outplayed them, anticipating their every move. As the enemy ships loomed larger on the view screen, Collins knew that they were facing an uncertain fate, their survival hanging by a thread. With their weapon systems down and the Zultan ships closing in fast, Collins knew their only chance was to run. "Helm, set course for the Oort cloud, maximum burn," he shouted over the blaring alarms. The Intrepid's engines roared to life as the ship banked hard, the inertial dampeners straining to compensate. On the view screen, the icy debris of the Oort cloud loomed ahead, a treacherous maze of rock and ice. The remaining Earth fleet ships fell into formation behind the Intrepid, their hulls scored and battered from the relentless Zultan assault. As they plunged into the Oort cloud, the sensors flickered and distorted, the dense field of debris playing havoc with their instruments. "The ice field's interference is masking our energy signatures," Mira reported from her station. "The Zultans won't be able to track us." Collins leaned forward in his chair, his eyes scanning the view screen. "Find us a place to lay low and lick our wounds," he ordered, "and I want damage reports from all decks." The bridge crew worked frantically to navigate the treacherous depths of the Oort cloud, weaving between massive chunks of ice and rock. In the bowels of the ship, damage control teams raced to seal breaches and restore power to critical systems. Hours crawled by as the Earth fleet hid in the icy labyrinth, the Zultan ships prowling just beyond the edge of the debris field. Tensions aboard the Intrepid were stretched to the breaking point, every creak and groan of the hull setting nerves on edge. In the dim light of the bridge, Collins studied the tactical display, his jaw clenched tight. They couldn't hide forever. Sooner or later, the Zultans would find a way to flush them out, and when they did, the Earth fleet had to be ready. "Captain, I have an idea," Mira said, approaching the command chair. Collins turned to face her, his eyebrows raised. "The Oort cloud. What if we could use it as a weapon?" She brought up a schematic on the display outlining her plan. "If we can lure the Zultans into the densest part of the debris field, we can use the ice and rock as a natural minefield. Our smaller ships can navigate the hazards, drawing the Zultans in. Then we detonate charges at key points, triggering a chain reaction." Collins studied the plan, his mind racing. It was risky, incredibly risky, but it might just be crazy enough to work. "All right, Ensign," he said at last. "Let's do it, but we'll need to move fast. The Zultans won't give us a second chance." As the Earth fleet made its preparations, Collins couldn't shake the prickling sense of unease at the back of his neck. He ordered increased sensor sweeps and patrols, but the readings came back clean. No sign of the Zultans, but in the icy void of the Oort cloud, a cloaked Zultan scout ship lurked, watching and waiting. The Earth fleet surged forward, the smaller ships darting through the icy labyrinth of the Oort cloud like silver minnows. On the Intrepid's bridge, Captain Collins gripped the armrests of his chair, his eyes locked on the view screen as the Zultan ships gave chase. "Keep leading them in," he ordered, his voice taut with tension. "We need to get them as deep as possible." The bridge crew worked frantically, coordinating the movements of the fleet as they wove through the treacherous debris field. Chunks of ice and rock hurtled past the ships, some barely missing the hulls by mere meters. At first, the Zultans struggled to keep up, their bulky ships ill-suited for the unpredictable terrain. Several of their vessels collided with the massive icy projectiles, their hulls crumpling under the impact. "That's working," Mira exclaimed, her scaled face lit with excitement. "They're taking damage." But just as victory seemed within grasp, a shimmering shape emerged from the depths of the cloud, materializing into the sleek form of a Zultan scout ship. Its advanced cloaking technology had kept it hidden from the Earth Fleet's sensors, allowing it to trail them undetected. The scout ship opened fire, its weapons cutting through the Intrepid's shields like a hot knife through butter. Explosions rocked the bridge, sending sparks flying from overloaded consoles. "Evasive maneuvers," Collins shouted, but it was too late. The scout ship's attack had caught them off guard, and several Earth ships were already falling victim to its onslaught, their hulls breached and venting atmosphere. Collins realized with a sinking feeling that the Zultans had outmaneuvered them once again. The scout ship's surprise attack had been a mere diversion, buying time for the main Zultan fleet to regroup and prepare for a final, devastating assault. As the Zultan ships emerged from the depths of the Orc cloud, their weapons charged and ready, Collins knew that they had only one chance left. They had to turn the environment itself into a weapon. "Scan the debris field," he barked, his jaw tight with determination. "Look for anything we can use as a projectile. The bigger and denser, the better." Mira's eyes widened with sudden inspiration. "Captain, I have an idea. In the Breen fleet we used to hunt Naiath whales by hurling massive icebergs at them with our tractor beams. What if we did the same thing here?" Collins nodded, a glimmer of hope igniting in his chest. "Do it. Divert all available power to the tractor beams." The Earth fleet sprang into action, their tractor beams locking onto the largest chunks of ice and rock they could find. With a massive surge of power, they hurled the makeshift projectiles at the approaching Zultan ships, each one the size of a small moon. The impacts were catastrophic. Zultan ships crumpled and shattered under the onslaught, their hulls torn apart by the sheer force of the collisions. For a moment, it seemed as though the Earth fleet had finally gained the upper hand. But the Zultans were quick to adapt. Their own tractor beams flared to life, deflecting the incoming debris and turning it back against the Earth fleet. The battlefield devolved into a chaotic melee, with both sides hurling massive projectiles at each other, amidst the swirling maelstrom of ice and rock. The Orc cloud had become a weapon, and the fate of the Earth fleet hung in the balance as they struggled to navigate the deadly terrain and outmaneuver their ruthless foes. The Intrepid shuddered as a massive chunk of ice slammed into its shields, the impact throwing Collins from his chair. He scrambled back to his feet, his eyes wild as he surveyed the view screen. The Zultan ships were closing in, their weapons hammering away at the Earth fleet's dwindling defenses. Collins knew that they couldn't hold out much longer. They needed a miracle. Suddenly, Mira's console lit up with a flurry of activity. "Captain, I'm detecting a massive gravitational anomaly at the heart of the Orc cloud. It's pulling in debris from all around it." Collins leaned forward, his heart racing. "Show me." The view screen shifted to reveal a swirling vortex of ice and rock, a maelstrom of destruction that dwarfed even the largest of the Zultan ships. Collins realized with a start that the anomaly was their only chance. "Helm, set a course for the anomaly," he ordered, his voice steady with resolve. "We're going to use it to take out the Zultans once and for all." As the Earth fleet plunged into the heart of the maelstrom, the Zultan ships close behind, Collins could only pray that their gambit would work. The fate of humanity rested on this final, desperate ploy. The ships bucked and heaved as they navigated the treacherous currents of the anomaly, the hull of the Intrepid groaning under the immense gravitational stresses. On the view screen, Zultan ships vanished in flashes of light as they were torn apart by the maelstrom's fury. But even as the Earth fleet pushed deeper into the heart of the anomaly, Collins knew that they were not out of danger yet. The Zultans were relentless, and they would stop at nothing to see humanity crushed beneath their heel. As the swirling vortex of ice and rock closed in around them, Collins gritted his teeth and hoped for the best. There were no other options left. As the battle raged on in the heart of the Oort cloud, Collins felt a growing sense of dread. The Earth fleet's makeshift projectiles had bought them some time, but the Zultans were relentless. Their superior numbers and technology were grinding down the human ships, each loss a devastating blow to their dwindling forces. On the bridge of the Intrepid, alarms blared and sparks flew from overloaded consoles. The ship shuddered under the onslaught of the Zultan onslaught, its shields barely holding. Collins gripped the armrests of his chair, his mind racing. They were out of options. The Zultans had adapted to their every tactic, countering each desperate ploy with ruthless efficiency. It was only a matter of time before the Earth fleet was completely overwhelmed. In that moment of despair, a memory surfaced in Collins's mind. A top-secret briefing he had attended years ago, detailing a last-resort contingency plan known only as Project Exodus. The project, he recalled, involved a massive colony ship, designed to carry a portion of humanity to a new home among the stars in the event of a catastrophic attack on Earth. Collins hesitated, the weight of the decision bearing down on him. Activating Project Exodus would mean abandoning the battle, leaving the Antares system to the Zultans. But as he watched another Earth ship vanish in a blast of plasma, he knew there was no other choice. It was the only way to ensure the survival of his people. With a heavy heart, Collins opened a secure channel to the Earth Fleet's command center. "Initiate Project Exodus," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos raging around him. "Begin evacuation procedures and prepare the colony ship for immediate departure." Acknowledgements flooded in from the remaining Earth ships, their crews scrambling to disengage from the battle and fall back to the rendezvous point near the Intrepid. On the view screen, Collins watched as the sleek form of the colony ship emerged from its hidden hangar, its engines flaring to life. But the Zultans had also noticed the sudden change in the Earth fleet's behavior. Their ships surged forward, redoubling their efforts to destroy the human vessels before they could escape. Plasma beams and missiles streaked through the void, hammering at the Earth fleet's dwindling defenses. The Intrepid and its remaining allies formed a protective perimeter around the colony ship, their hulls battered and scarred from the relentless Zultan assault. Collins ordered his crew to divert all available power to the shields, knowing that every second counted as the colony ship powered up its hyperspace drive. Just as the colony ship's engines reached full charge, a massive shape emerged from the depths of the Oort cloud, a Zultan warship dwarfing even the mighty Devastator. Its hull bristled with weapons, its tractor beam locking onto the Intrepid with an iron grip. Collins felt the deck lurch beneath his feet as the warship began to reel them in, the Intrepid's hull groaning under the immense strain. He knew that if the Zultans captured his ship, they would learn the location of Earth and the other human colonies, dooming them all to destruction. There was only one option left. With a grim set to his jaw, Collins turned to his first officer. "Prepare to initiate self-destruct sequence. Authorization code, Collins Epsilon 9. The first officer hesitated for only a moment before nodding, his fingers flying across the console. The bridge grew silent save for the hum of the overloading reactor, the countdown to oblivion ticking away on the main display. Collins closed his eyes, his thoughts turning to his crew, to the brave men and women who had fought and died under his command. Their sacrifice, he knew, would not be in vain. It would buy the colony ship the precious seconds it needed to escape, to carry the hope of humanity to a new world. As the countdown reached 0, Collins sent a final silent prayer into the void of space. The Intrepid exploded in a blinding flash of light, the shockwave tearing through the Zultan warship's hull and sending it spinning off into the depths of the Oort cloud. The colony ship, its engines flaring with the brilliance of a newborn star, vanished into the safety of hyperspace, carrying with it the future of the human race. Collins and his crew had given their lives so that others might live. Their sacrifice was a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity, a spirit that would endure no matter the odds. The Intrepid's hull shuddered and groaned, the countdown to self-destruction ticking away with merciless finality. Captain Collins braced himself, preparing for oblivion. But just as the timer neared zero, a series of earth-shattering explosions ripped across the hull of the Zultan warship. The deck lurched beneath Collins's feet as the Intrepid suddenly broke free, the Zultan ship's tractor beam sputtering out. On the view screen, confusion reigned among the Zultan fleet. Their ships drifted aimlessly, weapons falling silent as if paralyzed by uncertainty. Collins and his crew watched in stunned disbelief, hardly daring to breathe. Suddenly, a new fleet of ships burst from the depths of the Oort cloud, their sleek black hulls unlike anything Collins had ever seen. These mysterious vessels wasted no time, unleashing a barrage of advanced weaponry upon the Zultan ships. The alien vessels reeled under the onslaught, their hulls buckling and splitting. "Captain, we're being hailed," Mira reported, her voice trembling with a mix of relief and trepidation. Collins nodded, his eyes never leaving the view screen. On screen, the image of a grizzled, battle-scarred human filled the view screen. His eyes were hard, his features chiseled by a lifetime of conflict. "Captain Collins, I am Raven, leader of the Shadowfall," the man said, his voice gravelly and rough. "We've been watching your battle from afar, and we're here to help." Collins leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "The Shadowfall? I've never heard of you." Raven smiled, a humorless twitch of his lips. "We've been living in the Oort cloud for generations, preparing for the day when we would face the Zultans. We have technology and skills that the Earth government knows nothing about." Collins hesitated, his mind racing. The Earth fleet was in desperate need of allies, but the Shadowfall's sudden appearance raised countless questions. "What's the catch?" he asked, his voice tight. Raven's smile widened. "Smart man, we'll help you against the Zultans, but in return we want a seat at the table. We want the Earth government to share its resources and technology with us in the future." Collins weighed his options, the seconds ticking by. The Zultans were already regrouping, preparing for another assault. The Earth fleet couldn't hope to survive without help. "Fine," he said at last, his jaw clenched. "We have a deal." As the Shadowfall ships seamlessly integrated into the Earth fleet's formation, Collins couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept up his spine. The Shadowfall's motives were unclear, their capabilities unsettling. But with the Zultans bearing down upon them once more, he knew he had no choice but to trust in this fragile alliance. The combined Earth fleet and Shadowfall forces braced for impact, their weapons primed and ready. Collins gripped the armrests of his chair, his eyes hard with determination. The future of humanity hung in the balance, and he would do whatever it took to secure it. As the combined forces of the Earth fleet and the Shadowfall regrouped, Captain Collins couldn't shake the feeling that the Zultans were planning something. His suspicions were confirmed when Mira burst onto the bridge, her eyes wide with alarm. "Captain, I've been analyzing the Zultan ship's movements and energy signatures," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "There's a pattern, a coordination that's too precise to be coincidence. It's as if they're being controlled by a single intelligence." Collins leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I think the Zultans are using some kind of hive mind technology," Mira explained, pulling up a holographic display of the enemy fleet. "Their ships are moving in perfect synchronization, their attacks coordinated with terrifying efficiency. It's like they're all extensions of one mind." The implications were staggering. If the Zultans were indeed linked by a hive mind, it would explain their uncanny ability to adapt and counter the Earth fleet's every move. But it also presented an opportunity. "If we can find a way to disrupt their connection," Collins said slowly, "we might be able to throw them into disarray. Break the hive mind, and they'll be vulnerable." Mira nodded. "Exactly, but we'll need to work fast. The Zultans are up to something." Collins turned to his crew. "Get me a line to the Shadowfall engineers. We need their expertise. And Mira, I want you and our science team working on a way to sever that hive mind connection. We're running out of time." As Mira and the intrepid scientists huddled with the Shadowfall engineers, the Zultan fleet began to move in an eerie, hypnotic pattern. Their ships wove through the Oort cloud, their movements becoming increasingly erratic and unpredictable. On the bridge of the Intrepid, Collins watched the view screen with growing unease. The Zultan ship seemed to be drawing closer to the colony ship, its engines still powering up for the jump to hyperspace. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the center of the Zultan formation. A massive energy surge washed over the Earth fleet and the Shadowfall ships, and Collins watched in horror as one by one the human vessels began to lose power. "Report," he barked, gripping the armrests of his chair. "Our systems are shutting down, sir," the helmsman replied, his voice edged with panic. "Engines, weapons, shields, it's like they've been drained." Collins felt a cold dread settle in his gut. The Zultans had played them, luring them into a false sense of security while preparing a devastating new weapon. And now, with the colony ship's engines sputtering and dying, they were out of time. "Mira, tell me you have something," he said, his voice strained. The Breen scientist looked up from her console, her face grim. "We're working on it, Captain, but we need more time." Time was a luxury they didn't have. As the Earth fleet and the Shadowfall drifted helplessly, their power reserves dwindling, Collins knew that the fate of humanity hung in the balance. He turned to Mira and the Shadowfall engineers, his jaw set. "Keep working. Find a way to counter their attack. We're not done yet." But as he looked out at the crippled fleet, the Zultan ships closing in like predators stalking wounded prey, Collins couldn't shake the feeling that they were fighting a losing battle. On the bridge of the Intrepid, Collins watched as Mira and the Shadowfall engineers huddled around a glowing holographic display, their faces illuminated by the pulsing light of the quantum disruptor's schematics. "If we overload the quantum disruptor and direct the energy surge towards the Zultan fleet," Mira said, her voice taut with concentration, "it could disrupt their hive mind network, but we'll only have one shot." Collins nodded grimly. It was a desperate gamble, but with the colony ship crippled and the Earth fleet on the brink of annihilation, they had no other choice. "Do it," he said. The Intrepid's engineering deck became a hive of activity as the Shadowfall engineers raced to modify the quantum disruptor. Sparks flew from makeshift welding torches as they worked to reinforce the weapon's power couplings, sweat dripping from their brows in the sweltering heat. On the bridge, Collins watched as the Zultan ships swarmed towards the Intrepid, their hulls bristling with pulsing energy weapons. The Earth fleet and Shadowfall ships formed a protective cordon around the Intrepid, pouring every ounce of power into their shields and weapons. "Quantum disruptor at 60% charge," Mira reported, her eyes locked on the glowing readout. The deck shuddered as the Zultan ships opened fire, their weapons pounding against the Intrepid's shields. Collins gripped the armrests of his chair as the ship bucked and heaved, alarms blaring across the bridge. "Shields at 30%, shouted the tactical officer, his face pale. 80% charge, Mira said, her voice strained. The Zultan ships pressed closer, their hulls scraping against the Intrepid's shields. Collins could see the mad glint in their eyes, the frenzied twitching of their limbs as the hive mind drove them forward. 90%. A Zultan ship rammed the Intrepid's shields, the impact throwing Collins from his chair. He scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. "Fire!" he roared. Mira slammed her fist down on the console, and the quantum disruptor unleashed its fury. A blinding flash of energy erupted from the Intrepid's bow, engulfing the Zultan fleet in a seething maelstrom of quantum fire. The ships convulsed and shuddered, their hulls warping and twisting, as the energy surge ripped through their systems. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent, the Zultan ships drifting lifelessly as their hive mind network collapsed. Then, the Earth fleet and Shadowfall ships opened fire, their weapons tearing into the defenseless Zultan vessels with ruthless efficiency. Explosions rippled across the void as the Zultan ships disintegrated, their crews consumed by the flames. The Earth fleet and Shadowfall ships swept through the debris field, picking off the stragglers with merciless precision. As the last Zultan ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, a ragged cheer erupted across the Earth Fleet's comm channels, but the celebration was short-lived as the true cost of their victory became clear. The Intrepid, its systems overloaded by the quantum disruptor, drifted lifelessly in the void, its crew scrambling to evacuate to the remaining ships. The colony ship, its engines damaged beyond repair, listed helplessly, its dreams of a new home shattered. And the Shadowfall, their ships battered and broken, their numbers decimated, stood silent and still, their true motives still shrouded in mystery. Collins slumped back in his chair, his face etched with exhaustion and grief. They had won the battle, but at what cost? The Earth Fleet was in tatters, its ships damaged and its crews exhausted. The colony ship, their last hope for survival, was lost. And the Shadowfall, their newfound allies, were a mystery, their intentions and loyalties still unclear. But even in the face of this uncertain future, Collins knew that they had no choice but to keep fighting. For somewhere out there, beyond the reaches of the Oort cloud, lay the remnants of human civilization, waiting for the day when the Earth Fleet would return to lead them to a new home among the stars. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's survival had only just begun. As the battered remains of the Earth Fleet and the Shadowfall regrouped, Collins knew that they would need to find a way to repair their ships and regroup. The Intrepid, once the pride of the fleet, was now a lifeless husk, its crew forced to abandon ship and take refuge on the remaining vessels. Collins watched as the survivors of the Intrepid filed onto the bridge of the EFS Dauntless, the ship that would now serve as their temporary home. Their faces were haggard, their eyes haunted by the horrors they had witnessed. Many had lost friends and loved ones in the battle, their grief mingling with the bitter taste of victory. "Captain Collins?" came a voice from behind him. Collins turned to see Raven, the leader of the Shadowfall, standing in the doorway. The man's face was grim, his eyes shadowed by the weight of the losses his own people had suffered. "Raven," Collins said, his voice hoarse, "I don't know how to thank you for your help. Without the Shadowfall, we would have been lost." Raven shook his head. "We did what we had to do," he said, "but the price was high, too high." Collins nodded, his gaze drifting back to the viewscreen. The Oort cloud stretched out before them, a vast expanse of ice and rock that seemed to mock their efforts to survive. Somewhere out there, he knew, the remnants of humanity were waiting, their fate resting on the shoulders of the battered fleet. "We need to find a way to repair our ships," Collins said, his mind racing. "And we need to find a new way to fight the Zultans. The quantum disruptor was a gamble and it paid off, but we can't rely on it again." Raven stepped forward, his eyes glinting in the dim light of the bridge. "The Shadowfall has technology that could help," he said. "Weapons and shields that the Earth government knows nothing about. But if we share them with you, we need assurances." Collins turned to face the other man, his jaw tightening. "Assurances of what?" he asked, his voice wary. "That when this is over, when humanity has found its new home," Raven said, "the Shadowfall will have a place in that future, a seat at the table." Collins hesitated, his mind whirling with the implications of Raven's words. He knew that the Shadowfall's technology could be the key to their survival, but at what cost? What would it mean for the future of humanity to be beholden to this mysterious group and their unknown agenda? But as he looked out at the battered remains of the Earth Fleet, he knew that they had no other choice. They needed the Shadowfall's help, whether they liked it or not. "All right," Collins said at last, his voice heavy with resignation. "You have a deal, but I want to know everything about this technology of yours. No secrets, no hidden agendas. If we're going to work together, we need to trust each other." Raven nodded, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Of course, Captain," he said. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As the two men shook hands, sealing their alliance, Collins couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a deal with the devil. But with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance, he knew that he would do whatever it took to ensure their survival, even if it meant sacrificing his own soul in the process. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.